Welcome to another episode of Business with Passion. Each show features guests who have transformed their long-term passion into a successful business. I'm your host, Jay Hamilton Roth. My marketing strategy business grew from my love of talking with passionate business owners. In this series, I share their passion with you. So if you're looking for inspiration to enhance your business passion, keep watching.
My long-term passion is blending travel, service, adventure with a whole bunch of teenagers all around the world. Well, I think it all started most likely when I was a senior in high school and I was watching a television program and it was on an outward bound course where a bunch of kids went down to Chile to do some climbing. And I said, all right, that is what I want to do. So I saved money. I grew up in the Midwest, and so I was mowing lawns and I was shoveling driveways. And I saved my money, and then the summer before I went off to college, I went to Colorado, an outward bound course, and just got my butt kicked for 35 days running around the mountains. And I just loved it, every second of it. I think that's where all this started, was really that moment on an outward bound course. I think I continued my passion when I went off to college. I went to a really outdoorsy school in New Hampshire. It was in the middle of the woods. And I went backpacking and climbing and did all kinds of things for 4 years in college. My first job out of college, I was hired as a geologist to work for an oil company. And it was a great job because they offered me a position in Denver, Colorado. The trade-off was that I had to go to Amarillo, Texas and train for 6 months. And I thought I could withstand Amarillo for 6 months. It was fine as long as I was going to get to go to Colorado and do all the great things in the mountains there. Unfortunately, after 6 months, they said, well, we've got good news and bad news. The good news is we'd love to have you here. The bad news is we're closing our office in Colorado, and we want to keep you here in Amarillo. Well, I survived another 2 years in Amarillo and then just had to get out. From Amarillo and working as a geologist, I decided to go back to college in New Hampshire and got my MBA. And I was, again, wondering what I was going to do. I thought maybe I'd stay in geology again, back to the woods sort of thing. And I got sucked into this vortex of investment banking and ended up getting a job, great job, the cream of the crop job out of business school, and got sucked into working as an investment banker in New York. And I ended up working in New York for 2 years. I worked in Tokyo for 3 years. I worked in San Francisco. But it was a totally different lifestyle from what I thought I would be doing. So I spent 9 years as an investment banker. It was an amazing time in that you got paid a lot of money. You really got to do amazing things. It was a great, great job on one hand. On the other hand, you just worked your butt off. It was probably once a week I'd be pulling all-nighters. I was never home, and it was not the kind of lifestyle that I grew up with. My dad went to every soccer game, every swimming meet I was ever in, and I ultimately wanted that for my kids. And you could kind of see the end of the road after a little while. My oldest daughter was born in 1992, and I would barely see her in those years working as a banker. And my wife and I had a lot of conversations about, was this the kind of lifestyle that we wanted to maintain with a family? And the answer was pretty readily no. We wanted to make a change. Well, I was at a cocktail party one night here in Mill Valley, California, and I was talking to a friend, and it was a woman named Lisa Halstead. And I knew she had this little tiny company called Adventures Cross Country. And I said, wow, what a great thing. That is so just amazing what you do with these kids. And she's kind of a smart aleck sort, and she said, hey, you want to buy it? And at first I wasn't sure if she was serious, but it turned out that she was. She was having her third child. The business was really, it was a one mom shop, really, and it was getting a little overwhelming for her. And so I vividly remember the car ride on the way home with my wife about, all right, what do you think? Should we buy into this little tiny outdoor adventure company for teenagers? When I ultimately left investment banking and spent my first day at Adventures Cross Country, it was just a culture shock. We had a little office in downtown Mill Valley. There were 3 of us in this space that was about 10 by 10, 3 desks, and we were sitting in there. And it became very intimate, very different from my days, as you might imagine, the private office and all that sort of thing. And the first thing that struck me was walking through downtown Mill Valley, and there were all these people in the middle of the day having coffee and walking the streets, and suddenly I realized, first of all, I was wondering, what do these people do? And then suddenly I realized there was a whole other world out there of very happy people. And suddenly I was part of that world. So it was absolutely a revelation. And the real concern for me was, how was I going to transition from this kind of hardcore business job to this new world of outdoor education. And I have to say it was really very comfortable because I understood how things work with rafting companies, and I understood how things work with backpacking. And so when I'm talking to the rafting companies that we're contracting, or I'm talking to families about a backpacking trip, it was just a very natural evolution. And so all those years of kind of pursuing these things as a hobby, which suddenly now became my profession, it was really a relatively easy transition that I did not anticipate. My life now is so different from when I was an investment banker. I used to go to business meetings and I'd be in a conference room in Cleveland or some business in Iowa. Now I go and meet with a chief in Fiji or go to some village in Tanzania trying to figure out what our community service projects are going to be. So for me, it's been an amazing change. It's still a business, we're still running a business, but the venues are certainly very, very different. I think what most people don't anticipate when they make a change like this is how much work it actually is. It is an amazing amount of work because when you go from having all the resources like I had as a banker, and you've got assistants and you've got secretaries and you've got travel departments and all that sort of thing, to basically going where at first it was only a couple of us running the business, where you have to do everything. I don't think most people anticipate how much work it's going to be, and you have to be everything from janitor to accountant to sales rep to equipment guy, and it just is really a very, very different lifestyle, and that was probably one of the biggest surprises for me. We ended up buying into Adventures Cross Country. Lisa and I became partners, and our life changed dramatically. On the one hand, we had to move from the big old investment banker house on the top of the hill to the little house in the valley. No more first-class travel, no more great boondoggles all around the world. That was on one hand. On the other hand, I was at home for dinner every single night. I was seeing my daughter all the time. I've been to just about every soccer game she's ever played in, and it was absolutely a transition that I, haven't looked over my shoulder once in the 16 years since I've done that. So we get kids from all over the world who come on our programs. A lot of people think because we're based in Northern California, we get California kids, but that actually isn't the case. We get roughly a third of our students come from the eastern seaboard, Maine to Florida. About a third are from the Midwest, and the rest are from the western United States. And then we get a number of kids from Europe, Central and South America, and Asia who come on the programs. And so the geographic mix is really pretty staggering. You go on a trip and you'll have kids from Connecticut and Illinois and Missouri and Colorado and all over the place. So I think that's a big appeal to a lot of families, to meet kids from all over the world really on your programs. Typical kid who comes on our program is a kind of a mainstream middle schooler or high schooler. There are kids who really want to be on a program like this. We're not the kind of program where students are sent to get fixed, if you will. These are programs that the kids really, really appreciate being on the programs. In fact, we do reference checks on all the kids and that sort of thing. And so we really have a typical group will be 13, 14, 15 students, as close as we can balance it to male and female, and we'll always have a group of comparably aged kids together in a group, just because the social dynamics of any trip are so important. So you've got 14 or 15 kids, all who want to be there. You take them to these amazing places, and it really is the foundation for a great, great experience. The experiences are, you can look at them from so many different perspectives. They can be educational, they can be social, they can be cultural. On the educational side, every single one of our trips has a very rich curriculum in place. We've had experts who come and whether it's have done research for us on marine biology or leadership or kind of the cultural elements of the different countries and cultures that we're meeting with. And so almost every day there's a lesson in place that either our instructors are giving, or sometimes we'll have the kids, the students giving these lessons. They'll study, put together a lesson plan, and have to give it to the other students. So education is a big part of any one of these programs. Now, we're also doing a lot of different activities. Maybe a trip is going scuba diving or surfing or rock climbing. It really depends on the trip. We're assuming that the students really don't know how to do any of these things, and we start from scratch and build up. And for example, scuba diving, we put all of our students through a full PADI scuba course. So by the end of the trip, they're scuba certified, they've got their certification, and they can dive for the rest of their lives. Or we might, our language programs, we're teaching them Spanish or French, and they're going in the mornings, they're in classrooms learning from native speakers. In the afternoon, they're out wandering the streets with our instructors. They might have an assignment to interview people about local politics, so they might be going to a kitchen and cooking the native dishes. all kinds of different experiences. So there are many, many facets to these programs. Adventures Cross Country offers 4 different types of programs for students who are anywhere from 13 to 18. Some trips are more appropriate for older kids, some for younger kids. But for the most part, our 4 different programs are our leadership programs, our what we call blue water programs, which tend to be aquatic-based, sailing, scuba diving, surfing, that sort of thing. We have language programs where we go to Spain, Costa Rica, and France and work on our language skills there. And then we have our community service programs, which are actually our most popular programs these days, where we go to these amazing countries. We actually call our service programs hard work, hard play programs. The hard work part tends to be the service, and we'll always have 3 different types of service. We'll have a building component, we'll have a teaching component where we're going to a school and teaching English or something like that, and then we'll have a 3rd component where maybe we're working with animals, sea turtles somewhere, or maybe working in an orphanage or something like that. And so that's the hard work part of our service programs. And then the hard play is we'll intersperse those hard working times with really fun activities like scuba diving or surfing or going on safari or something like that. Now, our programs go all over the world. That's, I think, the breadth of our programs is pretty staggering when people open up one of our catalogs or go on our website. We go everywhere from, certainly we have programs domestically in the United States, but we'll go as far away as Tanzania and Kenya. We'll go to Ecuador and the Galapagos, go to Australia and Fiji, New Zealand, Thailand, Tibet, China. And so really, we're almost on every continent, and if we can get that Antarctica trip, we will be. Adventures Cross Country, I mean, we've got people that we work with all over the world, so our reach is really very wide. Now, here in Mill Valley, California is where, this is our headquarters. This is where our full-time staff works. This is where we bring people in to do our staff training. We'll bring in 130 people in fact, in a few weeks. We're bringing them all in here. We train them for 10 days here and then send them out all over the world. So this is really the brain center of everything. Our trips happen just during the summer, so as you might imagine, this place is really humming for June, July, and August. It's hard to convey the amount of work that goes into putting one of these programs together. Anybody can put together a nice website, anybody can put together a nice catalog and say, you know what, we're going to take you to Tahiti or Costa Rica or Tanzania. But the real challenge in running one of these programs is, 1, doing a lot of work in advance, and 2, having all the resources in place if something were to go wrong. And when you're dealing with developing countries like we are, it's inevitable that things go wrong. Buses don't show up. Somebody gets a sick stomach. The outfitter just messes up somehow. So it's inevitable, and that's something that we deal with on a daily basis during the summer. The quality company is going to anticipate this, have backups in place, and really have the trip be as seamless as possible. I've heard of programs that things go off the rail and suddenly their kids are hanging out for a week in some town in Africa. I mean, that's inexcusable from my perspective. But trying to convey that to people when they're looking at your program is really difficult to do. We spend almost a year in advance planning for these trips. Every day has many details all figured out in advance. And then if something were to go wrong, where are the hospitals? Where are the backup buses? What do we do if the bus doesn't show up? All that sort of thing we've got in place just in case it happens. I think one of the things that an Adventures Cross Country program delivers is a unique experience. We want to be different from the normal tours that go to a country, say Costa Rica or Fiji or somewhere like that. As an example, we go to Fiji, and a lot of people go to Fiji, and they go to the beaches, and that's nice. And but what we do in Fiji is we'll go to these remote villages that really we become every year. We've been going to these villages forever, and we are the social event of the year for these villages. They wait for us. When you go to the villages, it's the only way to get in there is to hike typically, so we might be hiking for 2 or 3 hours. When you get there, it is like you've walked into a National Geographic magazine. They're living life exactly the same way they did 200 and 300 years ago. You have to sit down with the chief. You have to drink kava with him, which is a South Pacific drink. And depending on the whim of the chief, you might be there for 3 hours as he welcomes you. You might be there for 10 minutes. He's the king, so you do what he wants you to do. And while the whole rest of the village is waiting outside, as soon as you step outside, they're welcoming you. Every night there is a big celebration where our skinny little American boys are dancing with these 300-pound Fijian women, and it's just an amazing, remarkable experience. And it's that kind of experience on every one of our programs that we really try to deliver. The kind of thing that is really a once-in-a-lifetime experience that these kids are never, ever, ever going to be able to experience outside of one of these programs. The challenge for Adventures Cross Country is to find new and unique places to go around the world. We can find them, but the challenge sometimes is finding people who are willing to send their kids there. And so you really have to, it's a very unique intersection. For example, we could do a great trip in Syria, but how many American families are going to want to send their teenager to Syria? So we're not going to do that. But our challenge is kind of keeping our offerings fresh and finding new locations. And so one of the fun parts of my job is that I get to run around the world and find new locations. Some work, some don't, but it's always fun to do that. Very interesting aspect to our program is the fact that so many kids these days want to do service, which I think is a terrific aspect to our society. It isn't just I want to go get tan on a sailboat. It's I want to go help people, and it's really interesting having seen that evolution over the years. And so we are working really hard to develop service programs in exotic locations, and so there's no question that that's going to be a big part of what we do in the future. Probably one of the things we'll do is we're going to focus on say topic-specific trips. Maybe it may be illiteracy in Africa, or it might be a reef study in Belize, or something like that. I think that's probably one direction that we're certainly going to be going in the future. Another place for growth for Adventures Cross Country, I think, will be family programs. We get a lot of interest from families that have seen these great experiences their kids have had and have said, all right, we want to do that as a family. And so there's no question in my mind that in the future we will be offering probably service programs for families going to places like Tanzania or Fiji or Thailand where people can get the family time but also get the service. Let me give you a sense of how one of our programs work, and I'll use our Africa program as an example. All of our students meet in New York, and we meet at JFK, and we all fly together into Nairobi. We fly in Air Emirates, which we're pretty lucky. We get great deals, and it's a great airline, and so the kids are feeling pretty good. They arrive in Nairobi, and it is absolutely a zoo. It's a totally, both literally and figuratively, I guess, and it is just a culture shock when they step off the plane. The trip itself goes from Kenya relatively quickly across the border to Tanzania, where we start our first service project. And last year, every year the service projects change a little bit, but just to give you a sense as to last year, one of the things we were going to do, we went into a Maasai village in the middle of nowhere, and our project was to build a soccer field. Soccer is a big deal there. And so working kind of side by side with all the Maasai kids and some of their families, we basically leveled a huge area, built goalposts, lined the field, got nets up, and it took us days to do this, as you might imagine, clearing it, leveling it. And then at the end of that project, they had a huge celebration where people from like 8 different villages came to see the soccer field. Again, this is like the social event of the year. Okay, the American kids, they've never seen American kids, and then they're working together, and now they built a soccer field, and we had a big giant soccer game between the Adventures Cross Country kids and the Maasai kids. Apparently they kicked our butt, but ultimately they figured out how the score would be a tie because they're gracious hosts. And then afterward, the kids they dressed, the Maasai people dressed them all in Maasai garb. And then we went to basically a Maasai barbecue, which is a very unique experience, African experience. And the kids this was a day that they will never, ever, ever forget. And so, and we're going to do some soccer stuff again this year, but we're also going to be painting a school and doing some restructuring of some of their classrooms, and we're going to work in an orphanage there. So we've got some really cool service projects. Now, in between those, what we do on this particular program is we go on safari. And Africa is, when I first visited there, I had low expectations, and it just blew me away. it was amazing the amount of wildlife that you see. And you know, in a day you'll see 20 and 30 lions, and you'll be driving along the road. This isn't even in the game park, but you're driving along the road, and all of a sudden there's a zebra standing there, and then there's a giraffe over there, and there are baboons, you know, on that corner. It's just exactly what you would imagine Africa to be like. So they're doing this in between their service projects, and then at the end of this particular trip, we go to the island of Zanzibar. And Zanzibar is this beautiful, tropical, white sand, super clear water island. And we kind of get away from, you know, it's pretty intense being with these villagers, and you know, you're on stage all the time. And finally we get to Zanzibar, where everybody can relax on the beach, and we actually put everybody through a scuba diving section there. So they go to class, they dive, they get tan, they relax before they fly home. And so that's kind of a typical adventures cross-country program. The hardest part for me, if I couldn't do this job tomorrow, would be going back into a situation where I had to work for somebody else. I've got the best job in the world. I've got a great product. I'm really, really proud of what we do. And I'm the boss. And it's really nice to be able to say, okay, my daughter has a soccer game this afternoon, I'm going to go. And so that would be the hardest thing for me if I had to change. Of course, I would do it if I had to. We have to feed our families. But that would be a challenge. Other passions in my life, probably not surprisingly, have to do with the out of doors. I love to mountain bike. We spend a lot of time up in Tahoe. I love to ski. There's nothing better than a spring powder skiing day at Kirkwood. And I love to fly fish. And so all those things together, I guess it's no surprise that somehow they're out from underneath the roof, all of them. But those are, you know, if I have the time, and I try to make the time to do those things. I have two daughters, and they're both teenagers. My oldest one has done 3 programs, and kind of a funny side note is she's done 3, and so I said to her, I mean, she's one of the luckiest kids in the world who can, you know, Dad comes home and says, where do you want to go this summer? Where in the world? And in fact, I asked her about 2 months ago, and she said, no, I don't think I'm going to do a program this summer. And it was like a dagger in my heart. So, but she's got soccer camp and all these other things going on, so, you know, I have to be a dad as well. Now, the good news is my younger daughter, who's just 13, who's just moved into the right age, is going to Costa Rica. She's going to do a service trip in Costa Rica, and she is so excited she's counting the days. So I've transitioned from my older, you know, 17-year-old to my 13-year-old, and she is just really ecstatic about doing a program this summer. I was really fortunate in that my last career as a banker trained me pretty well to do a lot of the things that you need to do to run a small company. One of my jobs as a banker was looking at companies and analyzing them. And so I had the luxury of looking at hundreds and hundreds of different companies and seeing the ones that were run well, the ones that were run poorly, who did what right, who did what wrong. And so bringing that skill set into running a small business was, for me, invaluable. And so I think that's the first step, is you got to have an understanding of what's going to make it work. There are many, many, many companies, especially in our industry, that people have come in with a great deal of passion and no real business sense. And they bought all kinds of inventory, and they get the best of this and the best of that, and have just splurged, and in a year they're out of money and they're out of business, and they failed. And our industry is just littered with companies who have done that. I think having that background was absolutely invaluable. But the other thing that I think is really important is when you come into a small business like this, you have to recognize that you are going to do everything. I'm typically the first one here in the morning. At certain times of year, especially the summer, I'm often the last one out. And you know, you just have to do what has to be done. I mean, I've got a great, great team of people. I mean, no question that they're the people who keep this place afloat. But you really have to roll up your sleeves and do everything. And you know, as I said, the early days when there were 3 of us in the office, we really did everything. Those are the days when we, you know, wait for the mailman to come with hopefully an application. And you know, I vividly remember coming home one day and saying to my wife, "We got 2 applications today. It was a great day." And now we'll get, you know, 30 and 40 applications on some days. So, but you have to recognize that, you know, certainly when you're starting out, you have to do everything. You have to be willing to do it.
Thanks for watching this episode of Business with Passion. If you'd like more information about Scott Van Eschen, other shows, or perhaps to be a guest on a future show, go online to tv.manygoodideas.com.